Howdy. Good morning, everyone. 10:30 on this beautiful, really sunny Saturday. It is September 27th. This is Aaron Boster, representing the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis, a single-point healthcare company, and super duper thrilled to be launching another monthly live stream. At the top of the hour at 11 sharp, we'll be turning the cameras on and going live. And I'll be answering your questions about multiple sclerosis live. I love to turn my camera on a few minutes before we get rocking and rolling, typically about a half an hour beforehand, to allow time for this growing global online community to amass. So let me throw my feelers out there and ask village members to join us. As you jump online, please share where you're jumping on from. I love to go back through the chat and read where everyone has amassed from, this village from around the globe. It's amazing. Jude has joined us. Good morning, Jude. One of our amazing moderators has joined us. Joe Siders is in the house. What's going on, my friend? Kira is in the house. Good morning, Kira. It is 10:32, and in 28 short minutes at the top of the hour, we'll flip the cameras on and we'll go live answering your questions about multiple sclerosis. We got Carol in the house. Good morning from New Jersey. Alina's in the house representing Arizona. Love that. Cumbria's in the house. Alan, thank you for being here. Hello, Deanne. Bluthton, another amazing moderator, has joined us. Sir, thank you for being here and helping out as always. Christopher French representing Indiana. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We've got the Priestess Z in the house representing North Carolina. Missy's in the house. Hello. Hello, Kristen. Hello, AB. Good morning to you. Denise, hello. Welcome, welcome. As you jump on, share where you're jumping on from. Sandy Barber's in the house. It's great to see you, madam. I hope you're doing well. Crystal is representing Texas. We've got the UK represented by Suzanne. Thank you for being here. Arsenal is in the house. Good to see you. Hello, Missy. Pensacola, Florida, representing. Candy's in the house. Madam, it's great to see you as always. Sherry is here, representing Ontario, Canada. Thank you all for jumping online. Thanks for being here. Happy Plains from Nova Scotia. We've got Oregon representing. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Cindy from Glasgow, Scotland. I had a really, really nice meal in Glasgow, God, about 20 years ago. Polly's in the house representing Missouri. Thank you for being here. Bubba representing. What's going on, my friend, from Orlando. This is great to see everyone jumping online. Thank you for being here. This is our September Ask Me Anything Multiple Sclerosis live stream. Aaron Boster here representing the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis, a single point healthcare company, where we care for families impacted by MS literally from around the globe. Ever since we launched in 2020, I've thoroughly enjoyed turning this camera on about once a month and doing a live stream where I get a chance to join up with you and answer your questions live about multiple sclerosis. Super Sergeant Payne is in the house. Carl representing Utah. Thank you for being here, Carl. Tricia, what's going on in Wisconsin? Rita, that's very sweet of you. Amy in the house representing Montana. Thank you, Candy. I'll give you a hug when I see you. I super appreciate that. Joyce is in the house representing Maryland. What's going on, Ben? Yet another amazing moderator. Ben is an OG to this channel, been around for quite some time. Thank you, as always, for helping keep this chat up and running, keeping it clean, helping me find questions. I'm so grateful to the moderators. Good morning, Sarah. What's the weather like in Texas today? Jen Mack representing London. I threw a polling question up in the chat. If If you have a chance, please click your response. What's your favorite season of the year? Is it summer? Are you like me and you love the fall? Are you sort of a snowbird enjoying the winter? What's your favorite? Or is spring the answer for you? Put your answer in the chat. My answer is absolutely the fall. It is gorgeous weather here in central Ohio right now. The trees have changing leaf colors already. It's really absolutely beautiful. Not too hot, not too cold. Kind of perfect for me. Jason Bell was in the house representing Rio. What's going on, Jason? Nice to see you. Carrie Perry is in the house representing Indiana. It is great to see you, madam. I hope that you are doing well. Thank you for being here. We've got music, the miracle drug. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Aaron Boster here representing the Boster Center. Super excited to connect with everyone today on this monthly live stream. This is the September monthly live stream for the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis. There's 70 of you that have jumped online. That's freaking amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As you jump online, share where you're jumping on from. I love to go back through the chat and read where this growing global online village has amassed. Please keep in mind when I start the live that I can't diagnose or treat you on the interwebs. I don't have enough information just from a couple lines that you've typed into a chat. And so please make sure to keep the questions generalizable so that everyone listening can benefit from them. Missy, I 100% agree with you. Autumn is divine. Mispa, thank you for joining us from the UK. Welcome, welcome. Joe Mullins, welcome, welcome. Joe Siders leading the way is reminding us that if you would like to be alerted to every time I go live, each month you can join the Boster Corner. Joe's thrown a link up in the chat. Click that link. It's free to sign up. It's a free monthly newsletter that we put out, giving you the latest and greatest in what's new in research and multiple sclerosis and what's going on at the Boster Center. And it'll tell you when I go live so that you never miss one of these live streams. So if you're interested in that, click that button. It's free to subscribe, and you can cancel it whenever you feel like. Ginger's going to the Canary Islands. Wow, I'm jelly. "78 of you have jumped online. We'll be kicking things off at the top of the hour at 11 a.m. sharp Eastern Standard Time, where I'll be tackling your questions live. We did have a few questions submitted before the chat over the last couple days, and I will definitely tackle those. Montréal, bienvenue. Maya's in the house. Indiana representing, New Hampshire representing. Nanny's living the fall out there. Suzanne Brown representing. Washington Courthouse. There's 70 votes. Most of you have had a chance to vote. What's your favorite season this summer? The resounding answer was fall. 60% of you feel like me and love the fall. The second highest was 26% that really enjoy spring, and that's my second favorite season, no question about it. Liz, I will absolutely discuss that with you. So that's a very critical question, probably one of the most critical questions that we could ask today. Make sure you ask that when we go live, and I will be happy to tackle that question. Joe, thanks for the love. Joe's reminding you guys that if you help me out by clicking the like button, every time that you comment, every time that you throw up an emoji, it actually teaches the YouTube algorithm that you dig this content and then helps push it out so more families impacted by MS can benefit. It's really a great thing, and it's really my goal that we as a channel and as a community reach as many families impacted by MS as possible. Again, the goal here is to energize, empower. The goal is to educate and help families impacted by MS not feel so scared. Sarah Evans, representing Oregon, great to see you. Ginger's in the house. Chris, lots to talk about. Candy, great question. Hold that for the chat, and we'll definitely answer that one. Yet another amazing moderator. Everybody wave hello to Angela. A fantastic human being and very helpful moderator on this channel. Angela, thank you for being here. Please give your hubby a hug for me. The Poconos representing. What's going on, Andrea? Carol's in the house. There's a lot of questions about BTK, and I will absolutely tackle that today. That's a very, very appropriate question. Now, we've got about 15-20 minutes before we go live at the top of the hour. This is Aaron Boster, representing the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis. This is our September live stream. Since I launched the Boster Center, I flip this camera on about once a month to do an Ask Me Anything live stream where I get a chance to connect with you and answer your questions live. Today we'll be doing that from the hours of 11 to 12 Eastern Standard Time, which means the camera goes on pretty darn soon. Prepare your questions. As you jump online, get yourself comfy and cozy. Grab a beverage, grab a glass of water. You know we do the MS Water Challenge here. Grab a coffee if you're inclined. Make sure you hit the bio break in the bathroom before we kick it off in just 20 short minutes. Jenny, thank you very much. You're absolutely right. I do need to refill this cup before we kick it off. In fact, guys, I'm going to do some behind the scenes, getting things ready, getting my lights and cameras and all that jibber jabber set up. Please talk amongst yourselves. Say hello to your neighbor, introduce yourself. I'll be back momentarily. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Mary had a little lamb, over. If you guys could help me out, tell me how my sound is. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Mary had a little lamb. Finland representing. That's amazing. I don't know that we've ever had someone join us from Finland. That's so cool. Kira's telling me and Sarah's telling me the sound's okay. All right, wonderful, guys. Sterling, the weather here is to die for. This is my absolute most favorite season of the year. It's super nice out right now. All right, I am so glad that the sound sounds good. We've had some trouble with sound recently. I've got a new microphone. I'm really hopeful that it's helpful. Again, I'm behind the scenes right now getting everything set up. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As always, this is Aaron Boster kicking off a September Ask Me Anything MS live stream representing the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis, where we care for families impacted by MS from around the globe. I am super excited to join up with you guys today, say hello, howdy, hi, answer your questions live. As you jump online, share where you're jumping on from. I love to go back through the chat and see where everyone has gotten together from. It's amazing to see where this global online village has amassed from. I love it, I love it, I love it. Tony's representing Pensacola, Florida. Thank you for being here, Tony. As you ask questions, please make sure to keep the questions generalizable. All right? I'm not able to diagnose or treat you on the interwebs. I don't have enough information from a few lines that you write in a chat. If you can keep the question generalizable, everyone can benefit from it. On the screen, you see our moderator, Joe Siders, has thrown up a link to the Boster Corner. If you click that link in the chat, you can sign up for a free monthly electronic newsletter. It's totally free to sign up. You can cancel whenever you feel like it, or unsubscribe rather. But it will give you the latest and greatest in what's going on at the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis, what's going on in the world of MS research, and it'll also tell you every time I go live so that you don't miss any of these events. I'm going to mute my mic for a second as I get things set up in the background. I'm going to stop the little boys' room. And remember, we're going to turn the cameras on and go live at the top of the hour. Say hello to your neighbor. Welcome. Welcome. Good morning. Happy Saturday, everyone. Aaron Boster here. It's 10:52 in the a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to go live at the top of the hour in 8 short minutes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Got some good questions popping off on the chat. We're going to hit all of those questions when we go live in 8 short minutes. This is the September Ask Me Anything live stream. Aaron Boster here, representing the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis. I've also got Mewtwo, my cat here, who wants to participate in the live stream. It would look like he may make an appearance on camera. Good morning, Monica. Welcome, welcome. Long Island in the house. What's the weather like out in Long Island, guys? Good morning, Claudia. Welcome. We're going to go live in 6 short minutes. I'm going to run for a quick bio break and I'll be right back on. Maya, bienvenue. 6 minutes, guys. 6 minutes. Hey, Ken. How are you?
Good. Well, we finally got some rain, and we're going to do the tree plantings on Monday.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you.
And I think I already had something scheduled for Tuesday, but it's right in the Worthington area. And then on Wednesday, we would come back and do those plantings down below.
Great.
You have a faucet right at the end of the garage.
Yep.
We could string a hose down there.
Yes, please.
And a hose that you might have, and then put a soaker hose on those trees.
That'd be great.
On those shrubs.
Yep, yep.
All you would have to do is turn the faucet on, let it run for an hour, shut it off.
I can do that. That sounds great.
A couple times a week, and that would be good. And they don't require as much quite at this time of year.
Okay.
Water as they do in the middle of July. So
Wonderful. All right. Well, that sounds super. Thank you so much.
I'll also repair that wall. I have the stones. Peabody has some back there.
Oh, great.
And
Perfect. Yeah, that's totally acceptable. All right, wonderful.
We'll get things underway.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your help.
You're welcome.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. It's time, guys. We're 3 minutes out. Oh, he said I'm not muted. Sorry, I tried to take a quick phone call, Jude. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay right now? Testing, testing. Good, good. You can hear my call. Super. I'm having some trees planted in my front yard. I'm super excited about that. We're going to kick it off in 2 minutes, guys. And you know what that means? It's time to start flaming up the chat. Go ahead and show some love. Throw flames in the chat if you would. There you go. Bluthton's got the right idea. Follow Bluthton's lead, guys. Flame up that chat. Get it all fired up. Ben's got the right idea. Sterling's got the right idea. We've got 2 minutes before we go live. Let's try to get the entire chat flamed up. Candy's got the right idea. Come on, guys. D's got it going on. Jude's got it going on. Flame up that chat for me, guys. Show the YouTube algorithm that you are pumped to be here today to participate in this Ask Me Anything Multiple Sclerosis live stream. We've got 1 minute, 60 seconds until we go live. I know you can do it. Flame up that chat for me. We got less than 60 seconds. Let's try to get flames through the entire chat. Sterling's leading the way. Tony's got it going on. Myra's got it going on. Welcome, John. Throw some flames in the chat, partner. It's about that time. We've got 1 minute until we go live. The autoimmune bullies got it going on. Flaming it up. There we go. We've got flames in the chat, guys. Keep them coming. Don't stop just yet. Less than 60 seconds. Heck yeah. Show that YouTube algorithm that you love where we are and what we're doing in this growing global community as we kick off another Ask Me Anything Multiple Sclerosis. Look at the flames in the chat. I'm loving it. Just a few seconds left. Don't stop, guys. Rita's got it going on. Keep flaming up that chat. Flames galore. Just a few seconds and it's on. Hey guys, hello, howdy, hi, Aaron Boster here. This is a September Ask Me Anything live stream. I'm representing the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis, where we care for families impacted by MS from around the globe. Aaron Boster here on this beautiful Saturday morning. It's September 27th. This is fall, and I love this weather in Central Ohio. It's to die for. The leaves are starting to change on the trees. I can't spend enough time outside in the evenings, and yet I know it's going to get really cold really soon. So I want to optimize it. Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here. There's 139 of you that have jumped online. That's phenomenal. Thank you very, very much. I started this YouTube channel way back in 2015, where I started to make educational videos to help my patients and their families up their game, with an intention of trying to educate them, empower, and energize them. But I didn't realize that we would be building this community. And there's I think 94,000 people that have subscribed to this channel. And we've been doing monthly live streams since about 2020, where I turn the camera on and answer your questions live once a month. And it's become a joy. It's something I look forward to every month, where I get a chance to interact with you. And it's really fun for me to get a chance to kind of interact with you in this fashion. It's very different from clinic, obviously. So thank you all for being here. Make sure that you have your water at the ready. We're going to play the MS Water Challenge. Now, I have an extra special reason to do the MS Water Challenge. I currently have a fantastic kidney stone, lots of fun. And so it's all about drinking some water for me as well. So let's just kick it off with an MS Water Challenge. You know how it works, guys. When I drink, you drink. Ah, that's really good. Yum. Now, I'm not going to lie. I've also got a little coffee here because you know how I love myself some coffee. We're going to be answering your questions live. I also would like to share a little bit about some updates from across the pond. Many of you who have followed the channel know that I routinely attend an international congress called the ECTRIMS Congress. ECTRIMS is a European consortium for treatment of multiple sclerosis. And this year I opted not to go. So it just is wrapping up today. It was last week. I spent the whole week in clinic seeing patients. As many of you know, with all the changes going on and the growth at the Boster Center, it wasn't the right time for me to step away for a week. I will be attending ECTRIMS next year. That stated, there's a tremendous amount of exciting data coming out of ECTRIMS, of course, and so I'll be talking to you about that data for months to come, and YouTube videos that I'll be making, and updates and live streams. And I actually have a couple quick ECTRIMS updates that I'm very excited to share with you on this live stream. So we'll do that maybe halfway through the hour. I'll share a little bit of a didactic lecture talking about MS diagnostic criteria, because we have yet again updated the diagnostic criteria, and they are literally new and improved. And so I'll be talking that with you a little bit later on today. I also wanted to share some updates about BTK inhibitors. There's been some news recently about a delay from the FDA, so I'd like to talk to you about that as well. But first, let's kick it off with a couple questions from the audience on this Ask Me Anything live stream. Our first question today will come from Christina Wall. And Christina says, is swimming recommended for PPMS? A lot of stiffness in the legs. Will they stiffen the same in the water? When I panic, it's worse. So that's a really great question. There's a lot to talk about there. So Christina, thank you for asking it. In order to live your best life, despite having MS, I want you to be 5 for 5 in your fight, right? Because there's 5 things that I'm aware of to slow down your MS, including PPMS. And one of those 5 things is exercise. I need you to exercise as part of your lifestyle if we're going to be able to make the MS as boring as possible. If we say it backwards, if you don't exercise as part of your lifestyle, you will end up more disabled towards the end of your life than if you didn't. That's a fact, and I can prove that. The rub, of course, is that exercising with MS is not easy at all. And whereas I need you to exercise, oftentimes it takes a little bit of extra effort to try to figure out appropriate, useful forms of exercise for someone impacted by MS. And one of the key ways of trying to sort that, if you're not sure, is to work with a physical therapist. So a physical therapist, these are some of the nicest, smiliest, good-looking sadists that you'll ever meet. They're very lovely, they're very, very smart, and they make you do really hard things. And they are uniquely poised to help evaluate you and how we're going to try to help you move better. Now, another pro tip, something that I find to be very, very helpful when we're trying to exercise with MS, is water. I would submit that water is darn near magic in the setting of multiple sclerosis. You can do things, Christina, in water that you can't do on land. You give an example of having spasticity and being stiff. When you're in water, particularly warm water, the spasticity will diminish. Now, if the water is really, really cold, it might make your stiffness get worse. And so we kind of have to think about that. But very frequently, we find that water decreases spasticity. So my patients have less spasms and cramps when they get in the water. But water does some other things also. Let's say that you have a weak left leg, and it's really hard to hold your weight on that leg because it's not very strong. When in the water, you don't weigh as much as you do on land. You're more buoyant, and so that weak leg can support your weight. Let's take an example of ataxia, unsteadiness, where you're unsteady and you're walking and your balance is really not good. If you're in the pool and you fall one way, the water literally pushes back the other and helps keep you upright. Many of my patients suffer from heat sensitivity. When they get overheated, when they start to exercise, for example, and their core body temperature rises, they short circuit and then they can't move very well, which really limits the efforts at exercise. And yet in the water, the pool, water wicks the heat away from you by convection, and it keeps the heat away from your body and allows you to do more. So, is swimming recommended for someone with multiple sclerosis? Yes. PPMS? Yes. Relapsing MS? Yes. I think it's amazing. And you don't have to swim. Anything you do in the water is going to pay dividends. I want to tell you a quick story about a very dear patient of mine who also had PPMS. And this is a story about a swimming pool. So this gentleman was a teacher of mine when I was in high school, and years later he became one of my patients with primary progressive MS. Really, really great gentleman. Very tall guy, like really tall. And there reached a point where in his primary progressive MS, he was getting worse, and he was using a walker, but he started to need to use a wheelchair more and more. And this happened many years ago, long before there were any medicines available for PPMS. And we hatched a plan. He took a life jacket and a throwaway walker, like a really cheap, flimsy walker, and he took them both into the swimming pool at a local YMCA. And the gentleman literally walked laps in the swimming pool with his life jacket on to keep him buoyant, holding on to his walker, and he used the walker in the pool and he did laps. And he did that about 3 days a week for about 3 months. Mind you, no MS medicines available at that time. He came back into clinic for his follow-up 3 months after I had last seen him. And my medical assistant at the time stuck her head out and said, "Hey, Dr. B, he won't do his timed walk until you come out in the hallway." So I went out in the hallway, and there he is standing there, all 6'9" of him, holding his walker, standing up. And he says, "Young man, are you ready?" I said, "Yes." And he picked the walker up, and he walked 25 feet, holding the walker in the air. He did that through exercise. He did that through sheer force of will. There were no MS drugs for PPMS at that time. And that's not some airy-fairy story. That's my patient that I had the privilege of taking care of. He did that with exercise. And he maintained his ability to walk with a walker for several more years. Now, eventually, as his disease progressed, he did end up needing a wheelchair, but he regained an ability. He maintained an ability. He kept himself moving on land by exercise. And he did it in the pool. So I love this question. Thank you for asking it. It's a really, really good one. Let's switch up the scene, and I'll take another question from the audience. All right. Now, I see here someone said, "Can you increase the audio?" Can you guys tell me, is the audio acceptable? Can you guys hear me okay? So here's a really good question. This question is from Kathy, and she writes, "At age 66, should I switch from Aubagio to a more aggressive treatment to prevent future progression?" And so I really like this question. It's a very contemporary question. When you look back 20 years ago, when we were studying MS, we really focused on cutting down relapses, newly diagnosed, early MS, trying to stop attacks, trying to stop new spots. And all those things are very important. That's a really, really important thing to do. But that's not the only thing that we need to be thinking about when we treat multiple sclerosis. And as a human being with MS gets older, the statistical likelihood of an attack is less, and the statistical likelihood of progression without an attack is more. And it's really important, as this question kind of points out, that we keep that in mind. We don't just want to use medicines to stop an attack and new spots on the MRI. We also want to slow disability progression and slow brain volume loss. Now, Aubagio is a weird little pill. I like it, actually. It's not very effective. It's mild to moderately effective at relapses, and it's mild to moderately effective at decreasing new spots on the MRI. But weirdly, it's actually really good at slowing progression of disability, and it's actually really good at slowing brain volume loss. And so I have no qualms with using Aubagio on, quote, the second half of the disease, if you will excuse that expression. Because in someone who's 66, you're still at risk of attack, but you're at a higher risk of progression. So I actually like Aubagio, and I think for you, it would really depend on some specific information that I don't have on this call. But I would say extensively, if you're stable on Aubagio, I don't know that I would rip it off necessarily. And I have plenty of patients who are 66 and who are stable on Aubagio doing well, and we keep them on it. And so I thought that was a really great question. If I was going to consider other medicines in a 66-year-old, and again, this is just sort of all hypothetical because I don't have enough information about you, I oftentimes will consider Aubagio like you're on. I'll consider a drug called Mavenclad that I'm fond of in this age group, and I will consider B-cell depleters. However, Increasingly in practice, we're starting to spread out the frequency of B cell depleters in people who are starting to get a little bit older in age. I'm not sure 66 is a little bit older in age, but we're going to start to look at your counts and make sure that your IgG, your antibody levels, aren't going too low. And my point here is, if we use a B cell depleter, it's possible that we might spread out the frequency a little bit as we get older. Now, here is a really, really important question. So if I had like a bell or a whistle or something, I would go, ooh, this is the important question. And this is a question from Liz. And she says, can you talk about tolobrutinib's FDA approval process, please? Will the FDA delay cause a delay from the EMA? All right, so let's unpack all of this. Those of you that have been following my channel know that I've been very involved in studying a type of medicine called a BTK inhibitor, or Brutin tyrosine kinase inhibitor. I didn't make up these words. So BTK inhibitors are little pills which have been used for a long time to treat certain kinds of like cancers and stuff like that. We've been studying them in the setting of MS. And at the Boster Center for MS, we've been very actively involved in several BTK clinical trials, like 5 or 6, a bunch. And these trials have been going on for many, many years now, since 2019, 2020. And we're starting to get results coming out. Now, the first couple results that came out were kind of lackluster and disappointing, because when we studied BTK inhibitors in relapsing MS and using a medicine called evobrutinib, it didn't do better than Aubagio. And so that was a negative trial for relapsing MS. And then we studied tolobrutinib, all right, which is another BTK inhibitor made by a different manufacturer in relapsing MS in a trial called the Gemini trial. And it wasn't better than Aubagio. So we have 2 trials where when we look at a BTK inhibitor for relapsing MS, it didn't do better than the standard of care. And based on that, those drugs are not going to seek FDA approval for relapsing MS. However, tolobrutinib was also studied in a trial for non-relapsing secondary progressive MS. That trial is called the Hercules trial, and I'm very proud that we enrolled 9-some patients from our clinic into that trial. And the patients that were enrolled had all had relapses in the past. They all had a relapsing form of MS. None of them had had recent relapses, however, but all of them have had progression separate from having relapses. So they were getting worse without attacks. And in the Hercules trial, the patients that were getting the BTK inhibitor slowed disability over a period of several years by 30%, 29%, compared to placebo. And that's actually a pretty big deal, because we've never been able to do that before in non-relapsing secondary progressive MS. So yay. Now, this was so yay that it was submitted to the FDA, and the FDA accepted to fast track it. So when a manufacturer makes a drug and they finish a phase 3 trial, they present it to the FDA, and the FDA goes through all the data, and then the FDA decides yay or nay whether they'll accept it into an American formulary to make it available to humans, or Americans in this case. And the FDA decided to fast track tolobrutinib. So they're going to speed it through the process, because they identify this massive unmet need in progressive MS. And that's exciting, because it takes something that would sometimes take years and it makes it take months. And there's a funny word called the PDUFA date. And again, I didn't make up this word. The PDUFA date is the date that the FDA has to tell you their answer, right? So that's like the results date, where they're going to say, here's what we've decided. And they're going to tell you whether they approve or don't approve the drug. And if they approve it, what does the label look like? And the PDUFA date for this medicine was supposed to be like now. But for tolobrutinib, for SPMS non-relapsing. So the news that came out last week, much to my sadness, was that the FDA has delayed their PDUFA date by 3 months. They kicked the can 3 months down the road, and they're going to give us an answer, but they're going to take 3 more months to do it. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we have to be a little more patient, which is not my strong suit. Does it mean that the FDA is going to say no? No, it doesn't mean that at all. What it means is there's a lot of data, and the FDA wants more time to review it. And so the jury's still out. We still don't know whether the FDA will approve tolobrutinib for non-relapsing secondary progressive MS. If I had to bet, I would bet they will approve it. That's just my opinion. The FDA has not asked Aaron his opinion. But it's going to be kicked down the line 3 months. Now, I want to share with you, this is not the first time the FDA has done this. And there's a drug, which is a very utilized drug throughout the world called Ocrevus. And they did the same thing with Ocrevus, where instead of weighing in at the time they said they would, they wanted a couple more months. So this is what's going on with tolobrutinib, and we will be getting results. But we're gonna get an answer from the FDA, but it's gonna be a little bit longer. Now, in the question, Liz says, does the delay from the FDA, is that going to slow down the EMA? So the EMA is the European version of the FDA. That's the European organization that looks at and assesses medicines to see if they'll approve it for European Union. And I don't know the answer. They do play together. Like oftentimes, if one says yes, then that'll influence the other. Whether or not this will cause a delay at the EMA, I don't know the answer. And so I don't want to just guess. It's a really, really good question. I also want to point out before we move on to a different topic that there's another trial called the Perseus trial. And the Perseus trial is also studying tolobrutinib, BTK inhibitor, but it's studying it in primary progressive MS. And I have my fingers and my toes crossed that the Perseus trial is going to be a positive trial and that we might see a drug like tolobrutinib used in both secondary progressive non-relapsing MS and in primary progressive MS. Now, we have several patients at the Boster Center for MS who have participated in the Perseus trial, and we're all rolling them over into what's called a long-term extension right now. The manufacturer is amassing all the data, and we should get a readout on the Perseus trial the first quarter of next year. Very, very exciting. That was a super question. I'm really glad you asked that question. All right, let's change the scene up, yo. All right, this is what I call the purple scene. And let's take another question from the audience. So, CDog70, that's a fun name, CDog70, asks a really great question. CDog70 writes, what's the longest MS prodrome time frame that you've seen in your practice? Can people be in an MS prodrome period for years? Yes. So let's try to talk about this for a little bit because I find it very interesting. A prodrome is a set of symptoms or things you experience preceding an illness. Okay, so lots of illnesses have prodromes. For example, before you get the full-on flu, you might feel a little more tired. You might have a little bit of cog fog. You might feel a little stuffy. And then a day or two later, wham, you got the full-on hardcore flu and you're in bed. So those couple days of feeling punky leading up to having the full-blown flu, that was a prodrome. And many, many different conditions have a prodrome. Now, this has been studied in multiple sclerosis, and it turns out that many people with MS have a prodrome. And this is really tricky to sort. So let me share with you a little bit about the studies that were done and how this was clarified. The data came from claims data, big insurance data, where we look at populations of human beings and we can look at their utilization of hospitals and when they see doctors, when they go to ERs, and when they're prescribed medicines. So kind of get a sense of kind of what's going on with them medically through the claims data. And what they did in these big claims data is they went and they found people who were diagnosed with MS, and then they went backwards and they looked at what happened in the 3 to 5 years leading up to the MS diagnosis. In the 3 to 5 years leading up to the MS diagnosis, many of these people utilized healthcare a lot more. They were going to the doctor more frequently. They were going to the ER more frequently. They were being hospitalized more frequently, and their utilization of prescription medicines went up. They were on more pills. And it really kind of clustered in 3 areas, either GI problems, GU problems, the down there's, or psychiatric problems. Those were the 3 areas that were seen most often. Meaning that for 3 to 5 years leading up to an MS diagnosis, they were having more medical problems, typically psychiatric, GU or GI, and going to see doctors and using medicines more often. Now, this is really, really interesting and very frustrating to me The reason it's frustrating to me is I can't figure it out ahead of time. I would love to be able to identify ahead of time, hey, you're having this prodrome. We're concerned you're going to go on to get MS, because that would give us a window to intervene before you manifested anything clinically. And I don't think that that is realistic today, which is much to my chagrin. It's kind of like you can only find out after the fact. There might be ways in the future, however, that we might do some screening. And I'm going to make up some things on the spot while I drink coffee with you on a Saturday morning. Imagine a scenario, and I'm literally just making this up. Imagine a scenario that when people came into, say, an emergency department, or they were seen by their primary care doctor, what if doctors started to order lab tests like neurofilament light chain? Now, neurofilament light chain is now commercially available. We're starting to use it at the Boster Center along with some other laboratories as biomarkers for MS. And neurofilament light chain is not specific for MS at all. NFL goes up when there's damage to the brain from any cause. So it doesn't diagnose MS. But if you have MS and it's untreated, it'll go up, and when it's treated, it'll go down. So what if when someone had some of these somewhat vague complaints where maybe the doctor's not sure, what if as part of the evaluation, they sent off a neurofilament light chain? And if that value came back sky high, maybe then we would get an MRI. Now, that's asking a lot of a guy in an emergency department, a doctor who is dealing with someone that has a stomach ache. Why they would think to get a blood test to look at brain health is a question mark. But I'm constantly trying to figure out, how could I a priori identify someone during the prodrome, because I could start treatment earlier. So to answer your question, 3 to 5 years is about what we see. And when I take a clinical history from a patient during consultation, when I'm meeting them for the first time, and they tell me, my MS started on this date, I will invariably say, are you able to think earlier? Was anything going on earlier? And oftentimes that person might remember a weird neurological symptom they had a couple years earlier, or they may describe a prodrome and say, well, actually, I was really struggling with XYZ for a couple years leading up to the diagnosis. So that's a great question. I really appreciate you asking it. Thank you. Let's switch it up and take another question. So here's a question from Andrea, showing a bit of love. Thank you for the kind words, Andrea. And she says, wait, where did the question go? Well, I can't find it. Well, but I remember it. The question was basically, what can I do about spasticity? So there's a lot of things that we can do about spasticity, Andrea. And if one of our moderators was kind enough to throw up the playlist that I have on the YouTube channel for spasticity, I would be grateful. Because I have a lot of videos. I mean, gosh, I probably have like 40, 50, 60 plus videos on spasticity maybe. And so there's a lot of information there, and I would encourage you to take a peek at that if you're interested. But just to talk about it for a second here, there's several things we can do to help with spasticity. First of all, let's make sure we know what we're talking about. Spasticity is when opposing muscle groups fight with each other. They're not playing nicely in the sandbox. And I'll use my hand as an example. There are muscles that make my hand flex, and there are muscles that make my fingers extend. And they oppose each other. So the flexors want to go this way, and the extensors want to go this way. And when I want to bring my finger in, the extensor muscles have to relax because I'm trying to go this way, not that way. And so my brain and spinal cord will turn off the opposing muscles. When there's damage to the brain and spinal cord from MS, sometimes those muscles don't get the email or the memo. So when you're trying to do this, you're also trying to do that at the exact same time. And now you have a tug of war across your own limb. I'm using my finger as an example because I can get it in view of the camera, but this could be your foot, your leg, your arm. And it typically manifests in one of three ways: a spasm, like a bouncing, a cramp, like a Charlie horse, or a stiff arm or leg or hand or what have you. And there's a lot of things that we can do to treat spasticity. There's a lot of medicines that we can use for spasticity. But in this question, in this answer, I'm going to stick with behavioral things that you can do. And then you can check out the YouTube videos if you want to learn about some of the medicines that you might consider. So one of the things that is massively undervalued in spasticity is water. So let's punctuate that with an MS water challenge, yo. When I drink, you drink. That's really good. I have to drink 4 of these today, I think. At least I would like to drink 4 of them today. Being hydrated decreases spasticity. And if you don't believe me, try it. Really get up on your water game. Try to get up closer to like 100 ounces of water a day. You'll be shocked at how your spasticity decreases. What else could we do? Well, there's a supplement that helps. So magnesium is a supplement. It's over the counter. You don't need a prescription for it. You can pick it up at Kroger's or what have you. And magnesium can help with spasticity. I frequently will recommend things like magnesium oxide, 400 milligrams up to twice a day. And for a lot of my patients, that will help with mild spasticity, which is great. Another thing that you can do is you can stretch. Stretching is very, very useful for spasticity. When you stretch, it will help diminish spasticity for several hours. And so I oftentimes like my patients to stretch in the beginning of the day. I'm trying to get my hand on the camera here. So at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, right? So the bookends of the day, and then once in the middle of the day. When you stretch, you want to hold each position for a minimum of 30 seconds, right? So 1001, 1002, all the way to 30, which is a really long time, actually. You know, this kind of thing doesn't work. You need to hold the stretch for 30 seconds so that your muscle can figure out what it's trying to do. And I would really focus on my butt, my back, my hips, my hamstrings, my calves, as well as quadriceps. And if you do that, you'll find that you have a lot less spasms, cramps, and stiff legs. What else can you do? You can identify that when you get cold, spasticity gets worse. Now, Andrea, I don't know where you live, but here in Ohio, the weather's changing and it's going to start to get cold. And invariably, as it gets cold, people will get stiffer. And so keeping that in mind and trying to stay warm, these are all very helpful things. A last behavioral thing that I'll talk about before I shift questions is movement. So spasticity gets increased, it ticks up when you're still. So that includes sleeping, but it also includes sitting at a desk or driving a car. And you may find that if you are sitting at a proverbial desk at work for, say, 8 hours, that a couple hours into your day, you get really stiff like Tin Woman. What I want you to do is I want you to figure out how long can I sit before I start to stiffen up. And before that happens, I want you to get up and do a lap. Just go to the bathroom and come back. Getting up and moving like that can be helpful. Some of my patients, they buy an under-the-desk pedaler. These little pedalers that you put your feet on and you just sit under the desk and pedal, not to burn calories, but just to keep your legs limber and keep movement so that they don't get tight. So those are a couple behavioral things you can do. There's a bunch more, and you can check them out on my YouTube channel here. There's a playlist on spasticity, and there's a bunch of things there that we can talk about. Now, here's a question that one of our moderators is putting forward. And this is a question about burning mouth. So what the hell is burning mouth syndrome, and what do you do about it? Let's talk about that for a little bit. So neurology is weird. It's a weird field. And sometimes some of the things you see in neurology are kind of freaky. And this is one of the things that are freaky. So for those of you that aren't familiar, burning mouth syndrome is exactly what it sounds like. It's a neurological condition where part of your mouth feels like it's on fire. And it could be your tongue, it could be the top palate of your mouth, it could be the gums, and it doesn't have to be the whole mouth, it could just be part of it. And it's extremely uncomfortable, like it's like a form of torture almost. Fortunately, it's not very common, right? But it's something that neurologists we see. We don't know exactly the cause. In fact, there's several different potential causes, and we divide burning mouth syndrome into primary and secondary. So secondary burning mouth syndrome would be caused by something else, like a nutritional deficiency, all right? So if there's something wrong with your nutrition, then maybe that's causing it, or some other condition. Primary burning mouth syndrome, there's no secondary cause, all right? And a lot of times we think that this might have both peripheral nervous components, like the peripheral nerves of your mouth and tongue, and central pain components. So it's kind of one of these complex things. Now, there's no increased risk of burning mouth syndrome with multiple sclerosis. And so this has been studied. We don't see an increased risk of burning mouth in someone that happens to have MS compared to the general population, but it's not very common. So the robustness of that data, I'll say, And at the end of the day, if you have burning mouth and you happen to have MS also, who cares? We got to treat it because it's very, very uncomfortable. So, how do you treat burning mouth syndrome? Well, there's no definitive treatment, there's no guaranteed proven treatment. There's a lot of things that we try with different varying success. So, one of the things that I think is probably used most often is benzodiazepines like Valium, so benzos. And sometimes we'll use an oral Valium that you literally put in your mouth, like and swish around. Or you can take oral, like a pill of Valium. And that's probably one of the things that people try first off. We, of course, will try neuropathic pain medicines like Lyrica. There's a little data that Lyrica might help. Sometimes people try gabapentin with different results. We can really try any neuropathic pain medicine that we would use. Something like Cymbalta is something that I've used in the past to try to help this. And there's some data that other things, like cannabis, may help. So this is a very unpleasant experience. It's something that if you have, you absolutely need to go to see the neurologist. And we're going to have to work together and try several different therapies, put you on something, ramp it up, hope that it helps. If not, bring it back down and switch it. So thank you for asking that question. And whoever this question originated from, I hope that you can seek help and not hurt so bad. Elizabeth, welcome, welcome, welcome. So clopidogrel, that's an interesting handle because that's actually the generic name for a medicine we use in stroke. So clopidogrel asks, I'm wondering your more recent views on Lemtrada. Do you feel it's still the most effective treatment? Yes. So I continue to prescribe Lemtrada probably more frequently than most neurologists in the United States or the world. Why? Because it remains the most effective drug that I've ever used to treat multiple sclerosis. And so we infuse a lot of Lemtrada at the Boster Center for MS. And this past month, we probably infused 3 or 4 people with the medicine. And it continues to be one of the most effective drugs that I've ever used. I still think that the only thing that you can really accurately compare it to is a stem cell transplant. And since stem cell transplants aren't FDA approved in the United States, and I certainly can't do a stem cell transplant in my standalone MS clinic, I turn to Lemtrada when people are having aggressive inflammatory disease to quell it. And I still find it to be an outstanding therapy. Lemtrada internationally has fallen out of favor because it's a complex medicine with a lot of risk. And that makes me sad because we shouldn't shy away from something just because it has risk. The risks of Lemtrada are quite significant and they're mitigatable, meaning they're treatable and manageable. And so Lemtrada is not for most patients, right? Most people are not willing to accept a bunch of upfront risk and complexity in exchange for the possibility of having quiet disease. But for the right patient, it's a fantastic therapy. And I continue to use it rather robustly in my clinical practice. I'm a big fan. So thank you for asking me that question. That's great. Here's a fun question from Bluebird, who says, is there a way to turn around or prevent cognitive problems? Yes. Does learning a language or playing puzzle games or reading help? Yes. So thinking and memory is one of the things that can be impacted by MS. And I would submit that upwards of 70% of people impacted by MS will have some difficulties with thinking and memory at some point during their disease. This is not Alzheimer's dementia, so this is not a situation where people will lose recognition of loved ones or where they are or things like that. That doesn't happen in MS. But what can happen in MS is it can become increasingly difficult to multitask, to do things quickly, to maintain lists in your head, to work under time pressure, to remember names quickly, things like this. And it can be really, really frustrating. And it's one of the leading reasons that people leave work in MS is because of cog fog along with fatigue. And there's all kinds of things that we can do about it. Now, Bluebird, again, I have an entire playlist on my channel about cognition, and I would encourage you to maybe check out some of those videos if you wanted to up your game. But to talk about it a little bit here, there's a host of things that we can do. And in the spirit of talking about behavioral things today, I'm not going to go through the various medicines that can be used to treat cognitive impairment and cog fog. But there are a bunch of them. So definitely check out those videos if you like afterwards and you can learn about them. But if we talk about behavioral measures, there's a lot of things that we can do. We have to make sure that we're adequately treating and addressing depression because if your depression is undertreated, it will make your cognition decrease. That's a fact. So by actually treating depression, we can improve cognition, and that's not to be underappreciated. We have to do the kind of stuff that your mom always told you to do, like make sure that you're getting a solid 7-8 hours of proper sleep and that your nutrition is on point. Because if it's not, that's going to actually negatively impact your cognition. And we have to make sure that we're exercising as part of our lifestyle, which will absolutely improve cognition. We also want to make sure that we remove non-essential medicines, particularly medicines that can contribute to cog fog and sedation. Many of the medicines that we use in MS for spasticity, for bladder, for pain, great medicines, but have side effects which can impair thinking and memory. So there's a host of things we can do. And you point out one of my faves. You can learn stuff. So use the brain to maintain in preserve the neurological reserve. All right, we've got to use that organ. And so doing cognitively demanding things is really, really smart. Doing Sudoku if you're sort of a numbers guy, or doing a crossword if you're sort of a word guy, or doing a puzzle, or reading a book and then talking about it. These kind of intellectually stimulating activities are extremely important, and I absolutely encourage you to do them. Next time you go to the supermarket, in the checkout aisle, they often have little booklets that you can buy for not very expensive that have crosswords and Sudoku puzzles and things. Pick up a couple of them and put them in your bathrooms. That way, when you're in the John and you have a couple minutes free, you can do a puzzle and get your thinking on. Very, very great question. Thank you for asking that question. Let's take a look here. I'm reading through the chat. Angela loves the purple. Thank you. So do I. So here's a great question, and this is from Implicity. I hope I said that right. What is the link between hyperreflexia in the legs and the Babinski in MS? Does this indicate a certain area of the spinal cord or brain is affected? What a great question. So as a classically trained neurologist, I'm a big fan of neuroanatomy. And I'm very fond of using the neurological examination to guide us in treatment plans. And so I really like this question very much. So let's pick it apart. First of all, what the hell is hyperreflexia? So that's a funky word. And I'm going to have a sip of coffee before I tell you the answer. So let's talk about a reflex. And let me see if I can get my arm in scene here. Okay. So if I want to bring my arm up like this, my giant massive bicep has to contract. It has to get shorter to pull my arm forward. My massive tricep has to relax to allow the arm to pull forward. So one muscle has to contract, the other muscle has to relax. And when we smack my reflex right here, it sends a message to my spinal cord saying, hey, something's happened, and it sends a message back which causes my arm to adjust. That's a reflex. A reflex is involuntary. You don't choose to do it. So when I take the reflex hammer and I'm smacking your elbow pit and I'm smacking other parts of your body and I'm seeing your arm move or your leg move, I'm assessing a reflex. When you have upper motor neuron damage, which is doctor talk for when you have damage to the brain or the spinal cord, that's called upper motor neuron damage. It can damage those reflex pathways. And when you smack the limb and the message goes back to the spinal cord, it spreads up and down the spinal cord. It covers more spinal cord than it's supposed to. And so instead of one message coming back to move the arm, a bunch of messages come back and it moves the arms too much. You can see a overly robust reflex. So let me see if I can I'm going to change the scene so that you can maybe see a bit better. So let's pretend that if I smack my bicep, that a normal reflex, just humor me. A normal reflex would be like that, okay? Hyperreflexia would be like that, where you see a robust reflex. And when the neurologist is beating on you with her reflex hammer, she's assessing your reflexes. Are they brisk? Are they big? Or are they diminished? When you have damage to the brain and spinal cord from MS, the reflexes are increased. They're up. So I used to train my residents and fellows. Upper motor neuron reflexes are up, okay? And when we see reflexes that are brisk, that teaches us that there's something wrong with the brain and spinal cord. Where the reflexes are brisk, so for example, if you're brisk in the legs and not in your arms, that tells us that it's probably localized to the spinal cord lower down. If you're brisk in your legs, in your arms, and your jaw, it tells us that there's probably a problem up higher in the brain. And so as we're sitting there beating on you with a hammer, we're using that information to localize where problems are in the brain and spinal cord, which is part of like the neurological examination. Now, this question by implicity says, is there a link between brisk reflexes, hyperreflexia, and the Babinski sign? So what's the Babinski sign? So Babinski is a dead white guy. And back in the ancient days of yesteryear, like a couple hundred years ago, it was all the rage amongst doctors, including neurologists, to name stuff after themselves. So if they found a clinical exam finding, they would name it after themselves. And there's a dead guy named Babinski, and he's credited for this finding. Pretend this is my foot, all right, because my foot's down here and I'm not that flexible, I can't lift it up. Pretend this is my foot. If you scratch the bottom of your foot, then your toes curl in. You're like, ugh, and your toes pull away. Okay. Interestingly, when you're an infant, when you're first born, if you scratch an infant's foot, their toes don't curl, they pull up. Okay. And as the infant grows and develops, they myelinate and they shut that off. So then at about age 3, when you scratch their foot, their toes curl down. And if there's later damage to the brain and spinal cord, say from multiple sclerosis, that off gets turned off. So the off is off, and now when you scratch the foot, the toes go back up. In other words, when the neurologist holds your foot and takes the end of the reflex hammer and runs it up your foot, which is very uncomfortable, and I apologize, we're looking to see what your big toe does. And if your big toe pops up, as opposed to curling down, that's abnormal. And that's called a positive Babinski. What does it mean? It means the exact same thing that brisk reflexes mean. Upper motor neuron damage, brain and spinal cord, can cause the toe to go up. So upper motor neuron, we say upgoing toes and increased reflexes. And so these two findings fit together beautifully. When we're doing the neurological examination and we're running you through the MS Olympics, right? All that kind of crud that we do. We're testing various neurological systems and we're looking to see which neurological systems are awry. One of the things that we look for is we look for increased reflexes and upgoing toes in the setting of multiple sclerosis because we know that the brain and spinal cord are affected. That's a lovely question. Thank you for asking it. Now, we've got about 15 minutes until we hit the top of the hour, and I've prepared a little bit of a didactic for you guys. And I think, ooh, I'm spilling the beans. I got to cover that up so you don't see it. So what I would like to do now is share a little bit about Ekstrom's updates. So I'm putting Ekstrom's updates in the chat. All right. Now, the Ekstrom's conference is hands down the Olympics of multiple sclerosis. It's held once a year. It's typically in a European city. This year it was in Barcelona, and much to my chagrin, I didn't attend. I didn't go this year. It's the first time I haven't gone in a long time. It makes me very sad, but there's so much going on with growth of the Boster Center that it was better for me to stay home this year. And I, of course, will go back next year. But that doesn't mean that we don't have access to all of the amazing stuff that was discussed and talked about at Ekstrom's. And I'm going to be sharing Ekstrom's updates with you for the next many, many months. There's a couple things that were published last week during the Ekstrom's Congress, and I've been reading a bunch of stuff all week long, very excited. And so I wanted to share a few things with you today. So the first thing I wanted to share is that the diagnostic criteria to diagnose multiple sclerosis has been updated. So what do I mean by that? We do not diagnose MS based on emotions, like a feeling, like it smells like MS. That's not how we diagnose MS. MS is diagnosed based on scientific rigor. And there are a set of criteria which we apply to the human being situation, which gives us a very strong sense of if they have MS or not. And it's based on math. It's based on statistics. There's really 5 elements to an MS diagnosis. The clinical history, the examination, the MRI, the spinal fluid, and prove it's nothing else. So when we're working up a human being for possible MS, we're looking at all 5 of those things, and we're taking that information and we're applying it to a set of diagnostic criteria. So there's been criteria for MS loosely since the 60s, and it got really formalized in the early 1980s by a guy named Charlie Poser. He had the Poser criteria. And then a fantastic gentleman who only recently passed away, a guy named Ian McDonald, came up with the McDonald criteria in 2001. And the McDonald criteria really formalized the use of the MRI. So we started to use the MRI more and more. And those McDonald criteria have been revised. They were revised in 2005 and 2010, and they were revised in 2017. Now they've been revised and updated in 2024. And this has now been published. And it was also discussed extensively at the ECTRIMS Congress. And so I just want to share with you a little bit about the changes to the diagnostic criteria. And then I'll share with you why we have proven that they're better than the old ones. So let me throw this up. This might be a little bit hard for you to see. I did my best to try to get it up on the screen, but I'm going to talk through it with you. So there are several things that were updated to the diagnostic criteria, and this is super nerdy, guys. This is not the kind of stuff that you need to know. I just am excited to share with you, okay? So one of the things that they did is they now allow the optic nerve to count as one of the different areas which could be affected by MS. So when you talk about dissemination in space, right, having different lesions in different locations, there are certain areas of the brain and spinal cord that count. Now the optic nerve counts, which makes intuitive sense. They also are no longer requiring dissemination in time in all circumstances. If there's enough evidence after your first event, we're not waiting for the second event, or we're not waiting for dissemination in time to make the diagnosis. And that's very, very important. When we do a lumbar puncture, traditionally, we've looked at 2 things. We've looked at oligoclonal bands, or the OCBs, or the bands, that's all the same thing, or IgG index. And we're now adding kappa light chains. That's another lab test in the spinal fluid, which is more sensitive than the old lab tests. And so they'll do a better job of diagnosing. And we also are starting to identify that we can diagnose MS faster without the absolute requirements that we used to have, having the diagnostic criteria allow us to make a quicker diagnosis is a really, really big deal. There's also some really big changes that we've made with the MRI machine, and these are probably the biggest changes in my opinion. When you look at an MS spot or a lesion, okay, so the white spot on the MRI, pathologically, that white spot is caused by cells, autoreactive immune cells, that left the bloodstream to enter the brain, and then around the blood vessel, they kind of caused inflammation. So if you imagine in the center of the lesion is the blood vessel where the cells came out. With new exciting MRI techniques, we can see the blood vessel, all right? And that's called the central vein sign, which makes sense, right? And so when you see a spot, a white spot, and you're asking yourself, could it be coming from demyelination? We now have a way to check. Because if there's a central vein, then that was more likely demyelination and not a vascular phenomenon. If there's not a central vein, it's less likely. There's also another fancy MRI metric called a PERL, all right? Paramagnetic rim lesion, PRL, when you say PERL. And this is another special sequence, but if you see this paramagnetic rim around the edge of the lesion, we know that's demyelinating. Excuse me. And so what that allows us to do, by including more areas of the brain and spinal cord to count towards dissemination in space, what that allows us to do, using new spinal fluid techniques which are more sensitive, what that allows us to do by including new MRI techniques that are more sensitive is allows us to do a better job of diagnosing people faster. And I'm going to show you the data that really supports that, because there was another presentation given. In this presentation said, okay, let's take the 2024 diagnostic criteria and let's compare it to the 2017 criteria so we can see how the new criteria is better. And it is quite better. So let me show you that. So comparing the old 2017 criteria, which by the way were very, very good, to the 2024 criteria, we can diagnose much, much faster. So just to go over the information, people were diagnosed more frequently when we used the new criteria because the new criteria captured more people with diagnosis. So 71% diagnosed using the new criteria compared to only 47% with the old criteria. That's a really big difference. And then if you take those patients and you follow them up, we found that it was even more. 83% now qualified based on the new criteria. Only 60% met the diagnosis with the old criteria. So what this teaches us is by using the newer criteria with these new updates, we're going to do a better job of diagnosing people compared to the old one. That's a big deal. It also, if you continue to look, allows us to have better consistency amongst the various tests. And the last point that I'll make is that every single person who met MS diagnostic criteria for 2017 also met criteria for 2024. And what that teaches us is we're not losing any sensitivity when we go to the new criteria. We're just gaining ability. This is very important. Why? Because the faster we diagnose MS, the faster we can start treatment. When we went from the Poser criteria to the McDonald criteria a long time ago, right? So that was like 20 some years ago. We were able to diagnose MS 3 times faster, which is really, really great. In each time that we've upgraded the diagnostic criteria, every permutation, when we went from 2001 to 2005, we got faster. 2017, we got more accurate and faster. And now, going from the 2017 diagnostic criteria to the 2024 diagnostic criteria, we are again more accurate, we're more sensitive, and we can do it faster. And that's a really, really big deal. So I'm very excited about this. At the Boster Center for MS, we've already implemented all of these changes. And so now our MRIs include the special sequences called SWI sequences so that we can look for paramagnetic rims and central vein sign. And when we do lumbar punctures as part of diagnostic, we now send off for Kappa light chains to increase our sensitivity. So those are 2 quick updates from this exciting ECTRIMS meeting, and I'll be sharing more with you in future live streams. Thanks for allowing me to share that with you guys. I was really, really excited to kind of go over that with everybody. All right, guys, it's almost the top of the hour. I'm going to wrap up right now. My name's Aaron Boster, and as always, thank you for learning about MS with me. It's an honor that I get to interact with you. It kind of brightens my day. I look forward to these monthly live streams, and as long as you keep enjoying them, I'll keep doing them. If you would like to know when I'm next going to go live online, you can sign up for the Boster Corner. If you scroll back through the very beginning of the chat, one of our amazing moderators threw the link up there. Joe Siders did that for us. You can click that link. It's completely free. And it will send you a free electronic monthly update on the Boster Center and what's new in research, etc. It will also tell you when I go on live so that you don't miss any of these events. I'm going to continue to make a YouTube video every other Monday morning, and I'm so appreciative for all of you that watch those videos. Thank you. Thank you for commenting on the videos. Thank you for liking the videos. That teaches the YouTube algorithm that you really like the content, and that helps push it out so more families impacted by MS can benefit. I will look forward to seeing you in 1 month's time towards the end of October when we kick off the October live stream. Until then, as always, this is Aaron Boster saying thank you for learning about MS with me. Be safe and take care.